former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
And I'm Wheezy, former tech exec turned podcaster and comedy writer. We're the hosts of the Horrible Decisions podcast. Through laughter and education, we work to destigmatize kinks, normalize conversations that are taboo, like sex, dating, relationships. Check us out every Monday.
That's right. Don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, the #1 app for podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's Cody Koch here. You may know me from Vine, YouTube, or as the co-host of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. But my brand new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, presented by Trojan Brand Condoms, is out right now. Here's a little preview from my chat with Tim Dillon. What do you seek out in a partner?
I want someone impressed that I'm on this show.
Yeah.
You did a podcast with Cody Ko. That's big. He's got 1 trillion gajillion followers on Ding Dong.
On TikTok.
Whatever it is.
On Ding Dong.
Zip Zop or whatever the kids are on.
My advice to you right now, go listen to my new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go on a Thursday. Can't believe how many things there are to talk about in sports live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we're on Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and right here on FS1. 1 hour from now, Greg Cosell, our NFL meat sandwich. If you bet the NFL, if you play fantasy football, or you just love talking about professional football in America, my favorite 10 minutes of football talk during the week. Greg Cosell, 1 hour. Joy Taylor is joining me. Joy, how are you?
I'm doing fabulous.
Have you ever had a job, Joy, that you kind of conform to the job? It doesn't feel like it's in your DNA.
Yes.
You don't know. We've all done that before.
Of course.
So when I used to work at the other place, and I interviewed at Fox, the Fox people kept saying to me, "You're not an ESPN guy. You're not a Connecticut guy. You're a West Coast Fox guy. You just conformed for 10 years. You're coachable." And I want to start the show talking about that today. Tom Brady has put his arms around Antonio Brown. I mean, he moving in with a family. Tom Brady's brand is clean cut. I mean, it is clean living. Yoga, avocado ice cream, wholesome. No drama. Focus. And now he's putting his arms around Antonio Brown, who is defined by drama. Domestic incidents, throwing furniture out of a building window, almost killing a kid, battery and burglary charges, ongoing sexual assault. People are saying, why? Is he desperate? This is the year Tom Brady is going off-brand, right? Guy gets a divorce, buys a sports car, In New England, we thought he was stoic and part of the system. In Tampa, he's taking these unnecessary risks. Or is he? Or is this who Tom Brady's always been? He was just conforming to New England. California dude, this is who he is. He's a risk taker. Antonio Brown talked yesterday about Tom Brady, and to say he admires him is an understatement. Here it is.
Tom is my boy, one of the greatest leaders to be around. He's encouraging, always inspiring. He brings out the best of the people around him. He wants the best for everyone around him. I mean, he's the greatest quarterback all time. Nothing he I've done in the past mattered, and I just learned a lot from him. He's been a great guy in my corner, and one of my close friends.
I don't think Tom's lying. I don't think AB is. Derek Jeter always felt like New York. The good-looking single guy for all those years. He felt like a Yankee. Troy Aikman has always felt like a Dallas Cowboy to me. Big Ben has always felt like a Steeler. Tom Brady's never felt like Boston. He just conformed. I hear people in media saying in New England, he's changed. Yeah, that's why I know he's not Boston. They never do. Boston's the most, and I lived right next to it, the most parochial city in the country of any size. Providence and Boston, statistically, demographically, they do studies on this. They don't watch national sports. Tom Brady is aspirational. He married a supermodel. He's creating a global brand. He has houses in Costa Rica, Montana. Tom's always been about growth and evolving. That's not Boston. Boston is you work hard, make a decent living, you buy a summer home on the Cape or maybe Maine, and that's about as far as you leave. An occasional vacation down to Florida. That's what Boston is. They stay there forever. Tom Brady is fun and happy. Boston's cranky and intense. Look at Tom Brady's lifestyle brand. Does it say Boston? No drinking. Avocado ice cream. Lots of yoga. That does not say Boston. It says California, where Tom has multiple homes. It says West. Tom Brady was never Boston. Belichick is. Smart, academic, cranky, intense. Plays golf on the Cape in the summer. That's about as far as he goes. Maybe a trip to Florida down, Jupiter, Florida, play some golf. Belichick is very New England. Brady never has been. In the summers, he got out of there. The minute he could get out of there, he went out of there. He goes international. He had a place in New York. He goes west skiing in Montana. He's got places in LA and Palm Springs. I just feel Tom Brady conformed for 20 years. And I think all of us have done that. Brady's not changing. Brady's always been willing to take risks. He's always befriended guys who've had issues. I mean, Gronk is not your typical NFL players. They were super tight. Go look at his lifestyle. He's not Boston. He's aspirational. He's happy. He's always adapting. He's always growing. That is not Boston. I lived right between New York and Boston. New Yorkers tend to be more aspirational, a little more global. Boston's parochial. His brand is no drinking. They're defined by Sam Adams. I mean, breweries, that is Boston. So I don't buy that Tom has changed. I keep hearing that. I think this is who is closer to who he is. Fun, adapting, evolving, thinking big, taking big risks, California thinker, always evolving, trying new stuff. That is the opposite of Boston, and it's absolutely what I think Brady is. So I think this is interesting. So the big story last weekend, and you wouldn't have think it would be the big story, but the Tua thing, we love our young quarterbacks. And, Tua plays at Alabama. He's a legendary high schooler from Hawaii. He goes to Alabama. There's a term, Tua time, when Joy's from there. We talk about it all the time. It was fun. Like, Rams, Dolphins wouldn't have had a lot of juice. It's like with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Instead, it was a lot of juice. And there's a story this morning. Brian Flores, the head coach, who I like a lot, he says, listen, I don't know where this came from. All this talk about we're auditioning Tua for the next 9 or 10 games. I don't know where it's come from. Here he is.
I'm comfortable with what comes out of these 10 games. I think since I've been here, I think everybody's heard me talk about the development of players, improvement on a daily basis. So I just don't see how someone close to Dolphins thinking could say that this would be a 10-game audition. That's just, not sure where that came from.
'Cause it's obvious. Ask yourself this question. Find me the other examples where a red-hot veteran quarterback has won 3 of 4. The 3 wins are all blowouts. The loss is close to maybe the best team in the league, second best Seattle. In a winnable division, by the way. For the first time in years, it's winnable. It is winnable now. Even Ryan Fitzpatrick, who went to Harvard, he's pretty smart, he was shocked by it. I mean, when they moved off Eli Manning in New York, he was washed. He was no longer productive. Cincinnati didn't have a choice. You had to go to Joe Burrow. They didn't have anybody else. The Chargers were going to sit Justin Herbert for the year until a doctor, Tyrod Taylor, punctured lung. Ready to go, kid? When you start looking at the young quarterbacks, we know, but Baltimore, they don't want to play Joe. They wanted to win games with Joe Flacco and let Lamar sit for a year. That wasn't the plan. Joe Flacco was bad. They started losing. They put Lamar in. find me the examples of veteran quarterback really winning. 3 of his last 4 games are blowout wins. The only loss is very close to maybe a top 2 team in the league, Seattle. Even the quarterback is, a Harvard guy is shocked, and we don't think it's a little bit of an audition because Miami has Houston's first-round pick, and right now it's a top 5 pick. Go look at the last 3 drafts. I'm going to list the first-round quarterbacks, all of them. 4 of them are hits. They have full support in the building. Burrow, Herbert, Kyler Murray, and Lamar Jackson. They have everybody in the building and they may struggle right now with Baltimore, but Baltimore came a play from beating Pittsburgh. Those 4 guys have total support in the building. The 8 others, there are questions in the building. Jordan Love didn't have a good camp. Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Baker, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen has struggled early and struggling now. Josh Rosen, and I think Tua. Because Tua doesn't have the amazing speed of a Russell Wilson or Lamar, Kyler. He doesn't have the size of a Josh Allen. He doesn't have kind of the durability of some of the other guys. I don't think you see that special at practice. I think a lot of his stuff, let's throw him out there. See how he takes the live bullets, right? Let's see how he plays in real space, real time, against real teams, at a real speed. But I believe absolutely unequivocally, 8 of the 12 first-round quarterbacks, there are questions in the building. Ask yourself, what? Patrick Mahomes, there were no questions in the building with Patrick Mahomes. So even though the Chiefs were winning, losing, they were like 9-7 that year. There was no rush. They were winning enough. They just kept Alex Smith in because they knew Mahomes was the guy. The Chargers were. I was told this by the Chargers. They were planning on sitting Justin Herbert all year long. They knew he was good. There was no questions in the building. They're like, I talked to their GM. It's like, huge arm, great kid, 4-point. He's going to be great. But we're in no hurry. Everybody wants to sit their guy. So why with a red-hot team that's overperforming, and for the first time in 20 years, it's a winnable division, the Patriots are bad, Buffalo is like reeling, you pull him. Because I think there's questions in the building. And I think the next 2 weeks when he faces Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow, I think you're going to size him right up and look right up. And who does he face the next 2 weeks? Kyler Murray's one of them, and I think, is it Justin Herbert? Justin Herbert. You can size him right up. He doesn't have the wiggle of one or the arm of the other, and I think it's going to become prominent. But I think if you know, there's no rush. You would never take a hot quarterback. I mean, Mahomes, everybody in the building knew. Peter Schrager told me, he's like, everybody in the building knew. Like, we got a star. What's the hurry? We're winning enough games. Let's just let him sit here. We're probably good enough to make the playoffs. They had Alex Smith, who was, I mean, we know what Alex is. Alex is closer to Ryan Fitzpatrick than he is to Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, that's fair to say. So I do think it's an experiment, and I don't blame Miami. Frankly, I think Joy and I said this. You gotta figure it out. You gotta see if he can play. Because there's not a lot of special you're going to see at practice with him. He's not big, doesn't have a huge arm, doesn't have a huge wiggle. You got to see him play. But I absolutely think this is an audition. And in the NFL we have today, there's a lot of auditioning all the time. Coming up next, 4 teams in the NFL were very good last year. All 4 are bad, including one of them playing tonight, San Francisco. They're a mess. Only one of those 4 that were winners a year ago and are bad now is rebounding. It will come back. And I think you'll see it tonight. That's coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
I'm Mandy B, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
I'm Wheezy, former tech exec, now podcaster, comedy writer, and I make up half of the Horrible Decisions podcast. We combine comedy, raunchiness, all in effort to destigmatize kinks and normalize conversations that are normally taboo, like sex, dating, and relationships. Make sure you tune in this Monday so you can hear conversations like these.
He sets up the phone, he bends over in the... Do y'all want to see this?
No.
I have never suggested cheating, bro. So I'm not going to tell her to cheat on this man. Otherwise, it's great.
Why is future toxic?
Are you serious?
I'm just asking. I don't want no beef on horrible decisions. Maybe that was a horrible decision to ask that question.
Wait. Join us every Monday on the iHeart app, the #1 place for podcasts. And don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Extremely active. Brothers and sisters, you already know what it is. The Gangster Chronicles. The land. From Oregon all the way down to Mexico. To all my SA brothers and sisters, viva la raza.
The Gangster Chronicles is a weekly podcast hosted by former gangbanger and inmate James McDonald, rapper MCA, and myself, Norm Steele. Weekly we get together and have conversations with everyone from former gangsters, drug dealers, and bank robbers to police, rappers, and politicians. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is a glimpse into a world where society is rarely allowed access. Nothing is ever scripted and it's 100% real. We don't glorify the gang, we simply educate and inform the world on what goes on in the streets of urban America. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Gangster Chronicles is brought to you by the Brothers Act Podcast Network.
This holiday season, get comfortable. Tommy John underwear, $25 off site-wide through November 9th. TommyJohn.com/herd. See site for details. $25 off site-wide. They don't do that very often. In November, I'm wearing it right now. I feel very comfortable today on Thursday. I mean, the country doesn't have a president, but I feel very, very comfortable right now. Joy Taylor joining me, Nick Wright around the corner. So tonight, San Francisco plays Green Bay. It's kind of a mess. I'm going to read, this is true. So the 49ers will not have a single person from the NFL championship that touched the ball. Garoppolo's out. Their 6 leading scrimmage yards leaders are all out. And Aaron Rodgers doesn't have a running back. You know, so it's San Francisco's going to lose this game. Backup quarterbacks. None of the guys you saw NFC championship that touched the ball, none of them are available. COVID injuries. So every year I do something. I come out and I say, okay, there's 2 teams that were really good. They're not going to be any good. And I get just nothing but hate, man. This year we have 4. Had I said before the year New England would be bad, oh wait, I did. You'd go nuts, right? People were like, you're crazy. New England was good, they're no good. Minnesota was good, they're no good. San Francisco was good, they're now no good. Houston was good, they're no good. Now, they're all explainable. New England lost the greatest quarterback of all time. Houston was poorly run for years, it caught up with them. Minnesota's defense got worse, and they had to rely on Kirk Cousins, and he's not that kind of quarterback. And San Francisco, injuries ravaged. I think there's only one of those 4 that will bounce back. I think Minnesota's still stuck with Kirk Cousins. I think Houston's still poorly run next year. I think New England can get a new quarterback, but he's going to be 23 years old, and they have no speed anywhere offensively. I think San Francisco's a bounce-back team. And it's going to be interesting, because they're going to have probably 3 options at quarterback. And we all acknowledge Kyle Shanahan is really smart when it comes to offense. Like, nobody disputes that. He's 4-0 against McVay with Garoppolo. His options are going to be go trade for Matt Ryan, who Shanahan has worked with. Go get Sam Darnold, probably only takes you a first or a second pick, or stick with Garoppolo. So Peter King and I are under the assumption, he came on yesterday, that the Garoppolo thing is done. He's had too many injuries. Kyle's not going to run this thing back again in the division with Kyler Murray. Jared Goff never gets hurt, and Russell Wilson. Here's Peter King yesterday.
Right now, if Kyle Shanahan is being honest, if John Lynch is being honest, all they can go by is what they see. When he's played, about half the time he's played at a C level. And last year, regardless of what the 49ers said in the playoffs, they basically, after he had his Steve Sachs, experience toward the end of the year, early in the playoffs, they went to the run. They love Jimmy Garoppolo, the person, but I think right now they're unconvinced about him as a quarterback.
So it's going to be very interesting in San Francisco, because I think their offensive and defensive line play is way better than average. I think their coach is an A. I think their GM solid. Their ownership solid. It's going to be, who does Kyle Shanahan like at quarterback? And for all the critics of Sam Darnold, this will be the test. Because Matt Ryan will be available for a price. We know Atlanta's going to get a top pick, and we know Atlanta's willing to move off their GM and their coach, and there's already been Arthur Blank acknowledging we're not sure yet what we're doing. So this will be the test. For those who doubt Darnold, this will be the test. Do you want a pocket passer past his prime Matt Ryan, or this losing quarterback Sam Darnold that everybody in America doesn't like except me? Because we know that Shanahan knows offense. We know Shanahan is smarter than us with football. And I think this is the one team that has the personnel, just injuries, that will bounce back next year if they get the quarterback right. Who will they choose? Garoppolo, Matt Ryan, or Darnold? I'm going with Darnold. That's my gut feeling. And I would too. Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Well, another team that's going to have to make a decision on their quarterback of the future is the Browns.
Yes.
Is he going to be with the team moving forward? GM Andrew Berry wouldn't give a clear picture on if they view him as the future of the franchise.
Honestly, I really don't get too caught up in that type of narrative. You know, all I know is that I think Baker has played well and he's done a nice job during these first 8 weeks. He's allowed us to play winning football. We've had winning football from that position. Expect him to keep doing that over the second half of the year. And, you know, look, we're going to be in a good place, you know, as a team and organization if that's the case.
Interesting answer. That was very vague and ambiguous.
I was listening very closely for Baker Mayfield is the future of the franchise.
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
Baker Mayfield is our quarterback of the future, or...
You didn't hear that, did you?
Yes. The Browns have to make a decision on the 5th-year option by the first week of May.
So they have the rest of this year and after the draft. So they got after free agency. They got plenty of time.
Yes. Picking up Mayfield's option would cost them a projected $25 to $26 million in fully guaranteed money for the 2022 season. He is at 61.4 completion percentage, a little over 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and of course the Browns are 5-3.
With a great running game, an excellent offensive line, top tight end, and wide receiving talent. All right.
If you look at his numbers, obviously last year I don't really hold against Baker because it was completely chaotic. But, you know, he's around what he was his rookie season, which was a good rookie season.
You watch Joe Burrow, Joy. Do you want the 4th best quarterback in your division?
Well, here's kind of where I am with this, though. If you pick up his option, obviously you're committing to him. But are the Browns going to be in a situation where they can move off of him? Like, what are the Browns' options going to be?
Well, they're going to play him this year, and my guess is they're going to play him next year. I think he has got another 25 games in Cleveland. But I go back to this. I say it constantly. You cannot have the 4th most talented quarterback in your division. He doesn't have the juice of Lamar, the talent of Ben, and he is clearly not Joe Burrow, who's playing with nothing and going to the wire against Baker head-to-head in games.
I don't disagree. I just don't know what the Browns' other options are. And I think a bigger picture point, what everyone is missing, is the Browns really missed their window. They missed their window when the Steelers were down and when the Bengals were terrible, and we weren't quite sure what the Ravens were. Well, now we know what the Ravens are moving forward, and I think Lamar Jackson is only going to continue to improve. Steelers are back, and the Bengals have the quarterback of the future.
No question on that last statement.
So
he is shocked. I thought he would be good. He is excellent so far.
You had an itty-bitty window to squeeze in there and take advantage of your
Would have been perfect
division.
if the quarterback came out of college mature and ready to grow. But you had to deal with a lot of nonsense.
They had a lot of nonsense going on internally as well.
That's totally fair.
Totally on Baker Mayfield. But I do think if you had someone like Joe Burrow come into that situation, it might have gone differently.
Might have? Can you see Burrow with this group?
Well, Joe Burrow is quickly making a name for himself by putting up strong numbers so far his rookie season, and he still thinks he has a long way to go in the league.
I thought I would play well. There's obviously still a lot of room to improve, and you know, I'm just scratching the surface on where I can be and where I can go. So, you know, that's the most exciting thing for me.
Love him. Absolutely love him. He's been fantastic.
I'm so glad you've come around, Joe Burrow.
Listen, I'm not as impressed with a trust fund kid who says I'm a millionaire. Where did you come from? What is he dealing with? He's doing a remarkable job. He's a rookie of the year. To me, he's a rookie of the year. I think he's sensational.
He's tied with Justin Herbert, according to Fox Bet, plus 100 for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Justin Jefferson's plus 1,800, Tua plus 2,000, and Chase Claypool plus 2,500.
I'd probably put Burrow 1, Herbert 2, and Chase 3. Chase has been great, but he is a wide receiver, and the quarterback position demands more.
Yeah, Chase would have to do something extremely historic, I think, to overtake Burrow or Herbert at this point. But what I like most about Burrow, and aside from what I already liked about him in the draft, is that he's come in and been completely quarterbackial.
Yes.
Which is what I expected anyway. But
Grown up.
he has dealt with.
Yep.
I mean, anyone would get frustrated getting sacked as much as he is. He's never said a word about it. He's completely a winner. And I think if you look at what's going on with LSU, now obviously they lost a lot more than just Joe Burrow, but they're not doing well this season.
That's right.
So it is telling. You say all the time, what does a place look like after you leave? That does play a role in how
LSU
good
with
you were,
30 NFL guys. Look at them.
what you did to elevate that situation. So the Cowboys have not named their starting quarterback this Sunday against the Steelers yet. So Mike Tomlin is shifting his focus to another player ahead of the game this week. He said, I know Ezekiel Elliott has a lot of our attention and preparation, rightfully so. Common sense tells you he'll be a central figure in your game plan. Yes, I would agree with that. That is common sense, since they don't know who their quarterback is going to be, and it is Thursday. So Ezekiel Elliott is the main fixture of that offense at this point. He's had 132 carries, 521 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's also fumbled 5 times this season. But, Fox Bet has the Steelers favorite at 13.5.
I think you got to run from that game. They should win by 40. I'm not going to bet that game. It's a trap game.
But think about this, though. Mike Tomlin's talking about focusing on Zeke, and we already know what the Steelers' defense is. Look what they did with Derrick Henry and that Titans run game and offense. Like, what are they going to do to the Cowboys if that's what they're doing against the Titans and Derrick Henry, who are dominant in that phase of the ball? Like, what are they going to do? This could be like
40 to 3.
All-time bad game for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think it will be. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Oh, my buddy, Nick Wright. First things first, check it out every morning, weekdays, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. 7:30 a.m. Eastern, not Easter. All right, Nick Wright is joining us. All right, let's get to the Baker Mayfield thing, because I like to be America's honesty broker, but some have suggested that I lean a little anti-Baker. Breaks my heart, but I'm going to give the floor to you. You run the Cleveland Browns. What do you do with Baker? Nick, my rule is you can't have the 4th best quarterback in a division. You just can't. At least not long term. What do you do with Baker?
Yeah, listen, it's election season. People understand you're a Baker conservative and a Darnold liberal, right? That's about what it is. Like, Darnold, it's, wait, what about this? What about that? Baker, it's what about this? What about that? So here's the thing, and here's where I'll defend Baker. This year's quarterback draft class seems like it's going to be very good, the one that we just had. Tua, Herbert, Burrow, but we don't know yet because it's been too early. Can we look at what the last 5 years of first-round quarterbacks look like? I made this fancy graphic this morning for First Things First, and I saw you did something similar, and I think it's worth delving into because what are we evaluating Baker against? He's obviously not Mahomes. And I think it's safe to say Lamar is a star, Watson is a star, and Murray could be. Is there any other quarterback taken in the first round the last 6 years that you're convinced is better than Baker? Goff and Wentz went just as high as Baker did in the draft, essentially. Yeah. They've been worse this year. Well, those other guys might lose their jobs, and the other guys beneath them already have lost their jobs, Colin. So, can I just put it back to you? What are we judging Baker against?
Okay, so I agree with the GOAT tier and the Pro Bowler tier, and the average starter tier, Goff and Wentz. But Goff has been to a Super Bowl, and he got there without a legendary defense, and at the time an old offensive line. Wentz and Goff are better than average starters. Baker's in the barely holding on with Darnold, Jones, and Allen when you consider the quality of people he played on. So I agree with your graph. I just don't think Baker, with his off-field stuff, with some of the nonsense, I think Goff and Wentz, there may be questions in the building. I think this Cleveland staff, they're looking for anything but a question. I don't think there's any confirmation in the building from anybody that he's the guy. That's my difference of opinion.
Colin, you talk about Wentz. This weekend, when we saw Cowboys-Eagles, we got to see in real time the experiment of what if you pulled a fan out of the stands to play quarterback in the NFL, and we got to see Ben DiNucci. That's the level of play we got from Carson Wentz in that travesty of a game. Carson Wentz was great for 13 games in his career. That's it. Goff, when you talk about Baker having everything perfect, Goff had everything extra perfect, and since then has regressed. So, we just see it differently. Would I give Baker a contract extension? No. Would I pick up his fifth-year option? Absolutely. And I know Joy was talking about the Browns missing their window. I feel like people are trying to skip a step with the Browns. In the 50 games before Baker Mayfield stepped on the field, they won 4 times. They're going to make the playoffs this year. It's a massive improvement, so let's just give it a little bit of time.
All right. So Brian Flores, who I think everybody kind of thinks is going to be one of the Belichick guys that works, it looks like that, he says this is not an experiment for Tua. And I say, if it's not an experiment, find me the examples of a team that won 3 of 4, all 3 by blowouts, only lost close to a Super Bowl potential team, Seattle. You pull him. The quarterback is shocked. You can win your division for the first time in 20 years because Belichick and Brady aren't working together. Let's just pull him and try Tua. I think they're doing it because they have Houston's pick. I think they're doing it because Tua doesn't have the size, the arm, or the wiggle to blow you away at practice. And I think people in the building are like, we better find out in 10 games because I see what you can be. It's called Burrow and Herbert. I see what you can be. It's called Lamar and Kyler Murray. I'm going to give you 10 games. That's 2020. That's the new rule. I do think it's an experiment with Tua. Do you?
No. I must admit, I heard you talking about this.
Yes.
And I asked off the air your ace producer Alex Rosenbaum. I said, "Is there a story I'm missing? What have I just been following the election and Tua got hurt again? Like what's going on? Tua's on the hot seat a game in. They just drafted him. You said he doesn't have the size. Did he shrink since May? Like they know what are we talking about here? They could have had Herbert. They liked Tua more. Don't you think it's possible they went to him because of how he's looked in practice? They're like, you know what? He's not going to be that much of a downgrade from Fitzpatrick even as a rookie. We think we can make the playoffs with either guy, so let's go with the player with the upside who we need to get the reps to. You know how much I adore and respect you, Colin Cowherd.
Yeah.
This is approaching your Mount Rushmore of craziest things I've ever heard you say. He's played 5 quarters, and you're like, oh, hot seat, it's 2020. What are we talking about?
All right, well, we'll see. Okay, so I said Jeter is New York, Aikman is Dallas, Big Ben is Pittsburgh. There are players that feel like an organization. Tom Brady wasn't Boston. He's aspirational. He's happy. He's international. He married a supermodel. His brand is avocado ice cream and yoga. He's not Boston. He conformed to Boston. What you're seeing now is relationship with AB, taking more risks, wanting to help run a team, putting it out there. This is who he is. And people in Boston are like, boy, Tom is changing. And I'm like, no. Belichick is New England. Smart, cranky, and intense. And he golfs in Nantucket. That's a vacation for him. For an hour. Like, I think Tom, this is closer to who he is. He is a pro player, big risk, put it out there, and I think the AB thing's going to work spectacularly. Your thoughts?
Okay, so I think the most interesting things that are going to be said about that topic, you just said them. So I want to take this slightly different because I had an aha moment while I was watching your monologue this morning. Brandon Marshall said something very interesting to me this morning when we were arguing about Baker Mayfield. He said, Nick, you like Baker because you're like Baker. Chip on your shoulder, always felt underestimated, some questionable off-the-field decisions, have a bit of a brashness to you. And I thought about it, and I was like, okay, you might have a point. And And then I hear your ongoing love affair with Tom Brady, and I'm like, oh, that's it. Colin loves Brady because Colin is Brady. He knows what his brand is, always trying to expand it, was once in a cold northeastern city, couldn't wait to get out of there, married a supermodel wife, married a famous artist wife. There's a lot of things. If we can continue the analogy, taking a younger, maybe with questionable off-field resume, protege under your wing, trying to help them along. Like, there's a lot of things here where I see Colin Cowherd and Tom Brady, so he can never do wrong in your eyes, because you're looking in a mirror. Maybe a slightly better looking mirror, but you're looking in a mirror. And so that's what's happening here.
Well, God, what you really said is you're Baker and I'm Brady, and I'd rather be me, according to your analogies right there. I'll be honest with you.
I mean, for the time being. For the time being, sure.
Finally, a minute left. Yeah. I'm going to throw the craziest thing I've ever said. So the NBA is going to start in December, and LeBron's like, time out. I just got done playing 8 weeks ago. Okay. If you're one of the final 4 teams, Denver Lakers, Boston, Miami, and you play any team that did not go into the bubble, you always play Denver, Lakers, Boston Heat. Get that? It's a home game. Those 4 teams this year are going to play 65% of their home games. Any non-bubble team that's had 8 months off, you play one of those 4. LeBron's like, hey, if you're going to make me play now, I get something back because I saved the league. If I opt out, the league's not the same. Those teams, anytime they play a non-bubble team, they play at their place. Am I nuts?
Okay, so that is such a, outside the box idea. I haven't fully, I would need more time to think about that specific proposal. But I do totally agree that if they are going to try to start December 22nd, there needs to be some type of dispensation for the teams, a level of it for the teams that made the bubble, another level for teams that made the playoffs, and another level for the Final Four. Because if you didn't make the bubble, you've had the longest offseason ever. If you made the bubble and not the playoffs, you've had a pretty standard offseason. Meanwhile, the Lakers and the Heat, and as you mentioned, the Nuggets and the Celtics, their offseason's going to feel like just one long all-star break and that's it. So I don't know if you have quite solved it, but I think it's got to be something along those lines. I'm going to let that You've given me a lot to think about here. I got to let it marinate for a moment. It is certainly not the craziest thing you've ever said. It is not even close to the craziest thing you've said in the last 31 minutes because you just benched Tua and he just started playing. But it is very interesting. I like it a lot.
Oh, that's funny. I already benched
Talk
Tua.
to you later, brother.
Nick Wright, first thing.
Yeah, you did. He's out. Tua's out. See you, my friend.
All right, Greg Cosell, top of the hour. Coming up next, I'm gonna say something here about my the quarterback tier thing. He just did a tier thing. I'm gonna do a quarterback tier thing, and I don't want to get too much into it. I think I'm gonna surprise you. Because I don't want to do top 10 lists for quarterbacks. I think there's 3 tiers: Hall of Fame, future. I'm not interested. And I just thought of something this morning. I'll talk about that coming up next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Hey there, it's Mango, host of Part-Time Genius, co-founder of Mental Floss, and like many of you, I'm one of the 21 million people that have picked up gardening in the past 6 months. That's why I'm hosting the brand new podcast, Humans Growing Stuff, brought to you by iHeartMedia and your friends at Miracle Grow. Join me on a green adventure as we talk with experts, friends, and surprise guests, and hear what gardening means to them. Listen to Humans Growing Stuff on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's Cody Koch here. You may know me from Vine, YouTube, or as the co-host of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. But my brand new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, presented by Trojan Brand Condoms, is out right now. Here's a little preview from my chat with Tim Dillon. What do you seek out in a partner?
I want someone impressed that I'm on this show.
Yeah.
You did a podcast with Cody Ko. That's big. He's got a trillion gajillion followers on Ding Dong.
On TikTok.
Whatever it is.
On Ding Dong.
Zip Zop or whatever the kids are on.
My advice to you right now, go listen to my new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Good to have you. Let me read this real quick. RecTech, more than a grill to lifestyle. Smart grill technology. Start the grill on your phone. Greg Cosell, top of next hour. It is a Thursday today. Nick Wright made me laugh. He just makes me laugh. He's funny. He's one of my best friends. He's funny. So, I was saying this. It's been really cool. I love professional football. I love college football, and it's really exciting to see these young quarterbacks come in and really hit immediately. Now it's easier today than it was 10 years ago. It's easier for Lamar and Burrow and Herbert. You can't touch the quarterback. I mean, years ago, you could win a Super Bowl. The Baltimore Ravens won a Super Bowl when they had Ed Reed and Ray Lewis and Chris McAllister. They would grab the receiver. You could just grab him at the line of scrimmage. You could jostle with him downfield. It's a different world. You can't hit receivers high. What does that mean now? Receivers go over the middle, and they're very confident. It used to be, it was 10 years ago, receivers, you could name the guys that would go over the middle. Guys didn't want to go over the middle. Alligator arms was a term, like nobody. Receivers are more confident than ever. Quarterbacks aren't going to get hit. Defensive players have to. Aaron Donald watches where he tackles you. You don't see the violence and the kind of hits. You can't hit anybody up high anymore. So it's all benefited offensive players. And so it's easier today. But that's the way the game's gone. I still think guys who are great are going to be great, and guys that stink are going to stink. It may take guys who are marginal and keep them in the league a little longer. But I'm reading some stuff on Joe Burrow this morning. He's been terrific. Love him. And I thought to myself, in the NFL, it really comes down to 3 tiers. There's only 3. I'm not going to list who's the best, because that's just so subjective. But I don't even think this is subjective. The 3 tiers are, let's go to the first tier. These teams are lucky to have their quarterbacks. They're Hall of Famers. You're lucky. Seattle, Green Bay, Kansas City, and Tampa, you're lucky to have them. That is a once-in-a-lifetime talent. You'll never get anybody in Seattle as good as Russell Wilson. Ever again. Tampa's been around for 40 years. They've never had anybody even close to Brady. Rodgers and Favre, I mean, come on. You just don't go from Favre to Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. These are once-in-a-franchise talent. The second group of guys, they're the future. Now, the future may not be 10 years. It may be 4. But it's Burrow, Derek Carr, who I like more than the rest of you. Goff, who I like more than the rest of you. Herbert, Lamar, Kyler, Ben, Ryan, Deshaun, and Carson. In the building, there is a belief, almost overwhelmingly, that's the guy for at least the next 3 years. Like, Ben could retire. And I don't list everybody here. And then the third tier is, you got to make phone calls. I put some of the people that are the best. So I didn't put just everybody here. Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, Bridgewater, Brees, Josh Allen, Garoppolo, Cam, Dak. Then I think you're making calls. I think you have to consider drafting somebody. Now, Josh Allen's the interesting one. I didn't put Baker or Darnold in here because we know the Jets are probably going to move off him, and we don't think Baker's going to be in Cleveland forever. These are the guys. Now, Bridgewater, like him, but they know there's limitations with Teddy. Brees is old. Josh Allen, to me, is a guy that was bad in college, bad his first year. He's back to being not very good, and he was good for about 2 hours. I think he's losing people in Buffalo, because I think this coaching staff is great in Buffalo. But I may be wrong on that. Here's my point. The quality of quarterback is so good. The bar has been raised so much with, like, Burrow and Justin Herbert. I mean, it's just like getting raised. And it's going to get raised more next year with Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. It's going to get raised again. That the bottom of tier 2, in many eyes, is Jared Goff, who many of you would not put in. Just think about this. Here's how good the quarterback plays. Here's how much the bar has been raised. Jared Goff in the NFL is averaging, if you look at his numbers, he's a 65% completion guy, a mid-90s passer rating guy, and you get 2 touchdowns for every pick. That's the bottom of tier 2. By the way, I think he's Matt Ryan with a better arm and more athletic. And Matt Ryan won an MVP. That's how good I think the league is. That this is a middle to a bottom tier 2 guy as Jared Goff, who I absolutely think will get to another Super Bowl, as long as he gets protection and some weapons with Sean McVay. So when you see the quality of these guys come in and pop, and then next year with Trevor and Justin, man, that raises that tier 2. Half this league right now is thinking about somebody else. Greg Cosell next.
Hey everyone, it's Cody Koch here. You may know me from Vine, YouTube, or as the co-host of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. But my brand new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, presented by Trojan Brand Condoms, is out right now. Join me and a celebrity guest on each episode as we try to right the wrongs of bad advice on topics ranging from work to sex to social media. Here's a little preview from my chat with Tim Dillon. What do you seek out in a partner?
I want someone impressed by what I do, which is so unhealthy. I want someone impressed that I'm on this show.
Yeah.
You did a podcast with Cody Co. That's big. He's got a trillion, gajillion followers on whatever app. He's on Ding Dong.
On TikTok.
You know, whatever it is.
On Ding Dong.
Zip Zop or whatever the kids are on.
My advice to you right now, go listen to my new podcast, The Pleasure is Ours, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mandy B, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
And I'm Wheezy, former tech exec turned podcaster and comedy writer. We're the hosts of the Horrible Decisions podcast. Through laughter and education, we work to destigmatize kinks, normalize conversations that are taboo, like sex, dating, relationships. Check us out every Monday.
That's right. Don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, the #1 app for podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Hey there, it's Mango, host of Part-Time Genius, co-founder of Mental Floss, and like many of you, I'm one of the 21 million people that have picked up gardening in the past 6 months. That's why I'm hosting the brand new podcast, Humans Growing Stuff, brought to you by iHeartMedia and your friends at Miracle Grow. Join me on a green adventure as we talk with experts, friends, and surprise guests, and hear what gardening means to them. Listen to Humans Growing Stuff on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mandy B, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
And I'm Wheezy, former tech exec turned podcaster and comedy writer. We're the hosts of the Horrible Decisions podcast. Through laughter and education, we work to destigmatize kinks, normalize conversations that are taboo, like sex, dating, relationships. Check us out every Monday.
That's right. Don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, the #1 app for podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we're live in Los Angeles, Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. Greg Cosell in 5 minutes. So, Joy knows I'm into drafts, and I have these lists and weird things I do. Whatever, it's weird. Everybody's got a weird thing. I got a weird thing. I've always had kind of this belief. I've always wanted to be an NFL general manager, and I have certain rules of the draft. One of the rules I've always had in the draft, I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before or not, I would draft a running back at least minimum every other year, but never in the first 2 rounds. So Seattle drafted Rashad Penny a couple years ago, and I said, this is a terrible draft pick. It's been a total bust. I do not believe you draft a running back. I mean, Herschel Walker, maybe he arrives today, you're like, okay, that doesn't look like anybody I've ever seen that's ever played the position. But my rule in the NFL draft is you draft a running back at least every other year. Because remember, 1 out of 3 are just going to bust.
Right.
And you never draft before the second round. You draft 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. And why? Because in the NFL, I believe, there's 4 positions you have to pay. You have to pay a great quarterback. You have to pay a great left tackle. You have to pay a great pass rusher. And then you're either going to have to pay a great corner or an Aaron Donald, a Fletcher Cox, an interior lineman. So save your money for the 4 guys. You don't have to pay anybody else. Now, increasingly, wide receiver is, you may have to spend some money, but I think the big 4 contracts are quarterback, left tackle, pass rusher, an elite pass rusher, and probably an interior defensive lineman or a corner. If you have an elite pass rusher, you maybe not have to pay your DT, you can pay your corner. But you're going to have to somebody you can lock out, a Stephon, even Belichick pays Stephon Gilmore. So that means I got to get breaks other places. And a prime example is when Ezekiel Elliott wanted his contract. I talked to 2 general managers who said, you never sign a running back to a second contract. You just don't. You just keep drafting them. You get trapped. Well, right now with Zeke, he does not look the same. He's averaging like 3.5 yards a carry. Troy Aikman on Dallas radio talked about it. Zeke, is he wearing down? He talked about it this week.
Dallas on 1st and 2nd down runs the ball the second least amount in the NFL, which I find interesting. Now, I know that there's games when you get behind, but for the season to be second on early downs, on running downs, when they have been built to run the ball, and that was the commitment they made, both in the offensive line and at running back, that surprised me a little bit. But yeah, I think that the wear and tear, he's a physical runner. He runs as hard as anybody that I've ever seen, quite honestly, and I think he's a great finisher and all that. But, that begins to take a toll, and it starts to happen about this time.
4 years ago, they beat the Steelers. I want to show you a video. I apologize to the radio audience. Look at how fast Zeke is. Look at the holes. This says a lot about what's happened at Dallas. Zeke is pulling away from people. He is not touched on this play. He is running away from DBs and linebackers. The holes are massive. Again, this is not all on Zeke. Look at these holes. This is against the Steelers, by the way. This is against a Mike Tomlin defense on the road when there were fans, hard to audible. I mean, it's just massive holes. Nobody is touching him. Nobody's touching him on these plays. And then you look at him now, and I know I just take clips, but we go back and look this morning at the averages, and a lot of this is the offensive line, but he doesn't look the same. He doesn't have the burst or the escapability. He goes down easier. His fumbles have gone up. He's just not as explosive. And again, the offensive line right now looks like it's backups to backups sometimes. But even earlier this year, when it wasn't all injured. So, it goes back to everybody was clamoring for him to get paid. And people were saying, do not give, this was my knock. I don't believe in paying people 2 years in advance. I'll pay you a year early if you're a quarterback, a left tackle, you're Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack, Stephon Gilmore. Like, I get that argument. But this is the argument, is that if you, by the second contract, running backs fall off a cliff. I've seen this my entire life. You're very good, and then by year 4, that's why running backs, by the way, want to sign early contracts. They want to get paid, because I think the drop-off for Zeke is significant. When I watch him play, Goulet, you're a Cowboy fan. You watch him play. You live for, does he look like the same running back?
Nope. He erodes a little bit each year.
Every year.
And it's finally at a point where you're like, oh, he's not great anymore. He's just good.
That's what he is. And you're paying him great money. And I think in the NFL, you can only pay 4 people that. The wide receivers now have increasing value, but you can find them anywhere, so you got to be careful, but they do matter. All right, Greg Cosell joining me, as he always does on Thursday. 41 years working at NFL Films, the most objective guy out there via the Coward Global Satellite Network. So, we got into this discussion this morning, Greg, about when it comes to young quarterbacks, I don't really pay attention too much to wins or stats. But and I don't think Joe Burrow has a great arm. I think it's pretty average. But there's something about him. I don't know if it's his calmness. He just tends to throw it to the right place. He doesn't have great protection. So you tell me, what does the film say about him? Where's the special sauce? What is he doing to move the ball so well?
Well, it's funny you say that, Colin, because that was the one thing when I evaluated him coming out of LSU that I said that the only knock against him is he does not really have a big arm, and he certainly doesn't. And every once in a while you see that pop up on certain throws. But he's incredibly refined in his understanding of where to go with the ball, what he's looking at both pre-snap and post-snap. Therefore, he plays with a very nuanced sense of rhythm and timing for a young quarterback, and he has movement ability. We normally don't think of him as a guy who makes second reaction plays, and in fact, this offense is really built with the amount of empty snaps that they play on the desire to get the ball out of his hands quickly. But he does have very, very good movement skill. We used to say he's a deceptively good athlete. We should just say he's a good athlete. So he's really has every trait I think you would look for, other than the fact that he's not going to drive the football with tremendous velocity.
So you told us last week on Lamar Jackson, Greg, you said, listen, the NFL, the coordinators are saying, throw outside the numbers. We're just going to blanket. We're going to drop 7 into coverage, 8. Prove that you can do it. So against Pittsburgh, he had a lot of turnovers. What did you see with Lamar against the Steelers?
Yeah. It's a great question because I watched that tape, and it's a very interesting conversation about the changing nature of the quarterback position, Colin. I know you've talked about it a lot, and what are quarterbacks now in the NFL? Do you need movement ability? A lot of people would say yes, but then what's the balance between that and being efficient from the pocket? And right now, he's not very efficient from the pocket. He's a little frenetic. He's a little undisciplined. He's not seeing things. There are throws to be made. There were in the Pittsburgh game. There are throws to be made that he did not turn it loose because now he tends to move prematurely. Now, will he make some otherworldly plays because he's got that kind of athletic ability? Absolutely. And that's why the question of where's the balance is a good one and an important one as we go forward in evaluating quarterbacks. But I'm still a believer that you can't leave throws on the field. And, in an era where everybody's putting up big numbers throwing the football, it took him until the final drive to get to 200 yards, and it would have been the fifth game in a row that he had not thrown for 200 passing yards. So right now I think he's probably trying to figure that out as well because he knows he can make plays with his legs, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah. So I think the Colts are a good football team that have a very low ceiling at quarterback. They probably have the worst athlete in the NFL at a position that increasingly asks for a little athleticism. Yeah. But it's funny about their defense. Is it good, or is Darius Leonard the best linebacker in football? Because when Leonard's out, it doesn't feel the same. And when he's in, he's just he's like a magnet to the ball. So what do you make?
That often happens with
What do you make of the Colts, their defense, Leonard? What do you make? Because that's the way they're going to get into the playoffs. It's not going to be because they're wildly explosive offensively.
No, and I think their defense in some ways, and I know they have DeForest Buckner, but I think in some ways it's probably a little similar to the San Francisco 49ers defense from a year ago. It's kind of built on their front four. It's a very good front four with a bunch of names other than Buckner, and of course Houston is still there, but they've got some other very good players. Nico Autry, Grover Stewart is a nose who's a very, very good player when you watch the tape. They don't blitz very much at all. As most teams do nowadays, they mix man and zone, but it's a coverage-based defense, and that's the way they play. And Leonard is a great player. He's an explosive athlete at the linebacker position. So the question ultimately becomes offensively, what can they do as they continue to play games and play ideally important games? Because defense, hey, everybody wants a great defense, but we know that when you start playing really, really good offenses, sometimes you give up points. I mean, look what happened in the Super Bowl with the Niners last year. They played great defense for 3.5 quarters, and then all of a sudden, a really good offense was able to make some plays against them.
So we get into this discussion. I said in the offseason, Drew Lock, I think, has it. But I've also said you cannot have the fourth best quarterback in a division. He's not Mahomes. I don't think he has the talent of Herbert. And Derek Carr throws a wonderfully accurate football. I watch Drew Lock, and I'm not into the dance and stuff. I've never been into that. Like, win a few games before, you're Michael Jackson. Like settle down and win games. But I watch him, and there's moments. And then I watch him against the Chargers, and I say to myself, wait a minute. He wasn't good in the first 3 quarters. They go to a package. They take the pressure off. He's got a clean pocket. Well, everybody in the NFL that's reasonably good is good then. What is the films? Because I think John Elway looks at this and thinks, oh, God, I got Herbert now twice a year? I got Mahomes twice a year? Who is Drew Lock on film?
Well, I think he's very talented with some things that need to be worked on. And let's remember one thing, Colin. We live in a world where we want to make a definitive decision about a player literally after he plays 5 minutes. This guy has started 10, 11 games in his NFL career. He was hurt this year, so he's in a sense starting from scratch. He's capable of outstanding throws. I mean, that deep dig he threw to Judy in the 4th quarter last week was a big-time NFL throw. Now, he's a kid who still drifts a bit in the pocket. He'll still throw some balls off balance. I think that his decision-making at times needs work. His ability to eliminate what is there and what's not there still needs work, but there's a lot to work with. And I'd like to see him be able to play, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row with the same cast and see how it plays out, because there is a high-level talent there. And you see the big-time throws, and he does have movement ability. He's a pretty good athlete.
All right, so we know a lot about Green Bay, and here's something I've been on. Joy and I have talked about this a lot in the last year. The minute somebody gets physical with them, the Niners, the Eagles last year at Lambeau, the Chargers pass rush, Tampa Bay, they're a front runner. They are great in the octagon as long as they can control the fight. They're great with a lead. But there's something about this defense. evaporates quick. And
Right.
the holes this week, it just wasn't Delvin Cook. The holes were so substantial. So what is it? Bad linebacker play? Bad schemes? What's wrong with the Packers defense?
Well, this week was very specific. And I say that because Mike Pettin is their defensive coordinator. And he likes to play, and this is when they're at their best, when they play in what we call their sub-defenses. 5 defensive backs, 6 defensive backs. When you play Minnesota, by the way, as was the case in the playoffs last year against the 49ers, when you make them play in their base defense, because Minnesota lines up with multiple tight end sets and a fullback. So Green Bay played in their base 3-4 defense, and they don't want to play in that defense, and they're not very good in it. And that's what happened last week. So not every team, by the way, can line up and do what Minnesota did or what the 49ers did in the playoffs last year.
Yeah. So that's just a bad matchup for them. And it happens in the NFL.
Matchup.
It's a bad matchup. A physical team that can do multiple tight ends, put them in their base. It's a bad spot for Green Bay.
Absolutely.
All right. We know that there's things you like about Tua. I know that. There's things I like about him. Did you see anything? I know it's a start, but boy, he looked a little small. Anything you saw in the film and you're like, I don't love that. I don't love that.
You know what? Let's be a little realistic. He didn't have to do much. He was not asked to make any tough downfield throws, but my sense was that he sees things quickly.
Okay.
I think he knows where to go with the ball. That will be tested more, obviously, as he plays more. Not every game's going to turn out like the Rams game. I did think that his 15-yard completion to Grant on the first quarter touchdown drive showed Tua reading the field, because that play design was the post-corner combination to his left. And the defense took that away, and he came all the way back to his right within the timing of the drop, and he hit Grant for 15 yards. So there was a small sample size, but I think he did okay.
All right, I want to go to your Drew Brees, and I've said this. I don't buy the Saints. I think there's a way Drew Brees can win now, but I don't think their defense is as good. He doesn't throw it over the top. I feel he's very, this will sound outrageous, but I don't think he's that far from Teddy Bridgewater, and that's why when he left last year, Bridgewater looked a lot like him. I think they're very similar at this point in Drew's career. So what is he? And then we'll move into the play of the week. What is he at this point?
He definitely doesn't throw it, Colin, you're right, the way he used to. And that's noticeable on a number of throws. The ball just doesn't come out real well. And on occasion now, he's a little bit inaccurate with certain throws that he used to make without a problem. So he's not the same quarterback, and therefore their offense is different. And we'll see how far it can take them. And they're obviously going to be playing a Buck defense this week that is very aggressive. They blitz. They get people clean to the quarterback, which you don't see very often in the NFL. But say what you want about Brees, Sean Payton is a very, very good schemer of offense in getting people open. And that's essentially the play I want to show. In a close game with the Bears last week, he had a touchdown to Jared Cook, which came one play after he missed a wide-open Jared Cook on a ball that he wouldn't miss in 100 years. So let's take a look at this touchdown to Jared Cook that came at the end of the first half. And again, it just looks like pitch and catch right here, and it became pitch and catch because of the design. They're going to go trips to the wide side of the field, and tight trips, everybody inside the numbers. The 3 receivers are there. They're going to have Smith, the inside receiver, run an over route. That will eat up the safety. Then you're going to have Carr, who's number 2 to trips. He works to the flat, and that eats up the flat defender. So what do you end up with? And you're going to see this as it plays out. It's going to end up with Cook working against an outside leverage corner. But it's the design of this. There's Smith taking the safety with him. There's Carr expanding the flat defender. So what do you get? Cook one-on-one with an outside leverage corner because Cook was initially lined inside the numbers. So this was beautiful design to create a throw, Colin, that I dare say you could probably have made.
Barely. All right, Greg Cosell, 41 years, NFL Films on a Thursday as always. Greg, great seeing you.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it.
You bet. Some thoughts on NBA season is going to be December 22nd. It sounds like that's the day. We don't have a president yet. What is Odell Beckham at this point in his career? Andrew Berry, the GM in Cleveland, talked about that. All coming up. Don't go anywhere, not even halfway home yet.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you like.
Hey everyone, it's Cody Koch here. You may know me from Vine, YouTube, or as the co-host of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. But my brand new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, presented by Trojan Brand Condoms, is out right now. Here's a little preview from my chat with Tim Dillon. What do you seek out in a partner?
I want someone impressed that I'm on this show.
Yeah.
You did a podcast with Cody Koch. That's big. He's got a gajillion followers on Ding Dong.
On TikTok.
You know, whatever it is.
On Ding Dong.
Zip Zop or whatever the kids are on.
My advice to you right now, go listen to my new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mandy B, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
I'm Wheezy, former tech exec, now podcaster, comedy writer, and I make up half of the Horrible Decisions podcast. We combine comedy, raunchiness, all in effort to destigmatize kinks and normalize conversations that are normally taboo, like sex, dating, and relationships. Make sure you tune in this Monday so you can hear conversations like these.
He sets up the phone, he bends over in the... Do y'all want to see it?
No.
We have never suggested cheating, bro. So I'm not going to tell her to cheat on this man. Otherwise, it's great.
Why is Future toxic?
Are you serious?
I'm just asking. I don't want no beef on horrible decisions. Maybe that was a horrible decision to ask that question.
Wait. Join us every Monday on the iHeart app, the #1 place for podcasts. And don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Tonight, Aaron Rodgers leads the NFC North leading Packers against the 49ers. It all starts at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific on Fox NFL Network and streaming on Prime Video.
So Aaron doesn't have any of his running backs, and San Francisco doesn't have anybody, period. So Green Bay is going to win this football game. The question is, what'll it look like? I have a feeling it's a blowout tonight. Green Bay is going to...
I don't know. I mean, it's still Shanahan.
I know. But Shanahan has a bad record when Jimmy G's not around. San Francisco's very interesting, Joy. The bottom line is, you can like... I like Jimmy Garoppolo, but you can't keep going back to something that doesn't... You know, I mean, if... Again, you're in a relationship. The person cheats on you. You go back again. They cheat on you. If you go back a third time, it's on you. Like, it's sometimes shame on them. At some point, shame on you. Garoppolo was hurt in New England. Okay, aberration. First full year, hurt in San Francisco. We're concerned, but it's not a trend. He's hurt again. Now we got a trend. Now it's time. I can't keep going back to it. So it's like, I believe in second chances, but this would be like a third. And Kyle Shanahan's like, listen, man, I got a job. It's not like Shanahan would not get another job and he's got a long-term contract, but these games matter. The narrative on you in the NFL can go from you're really good to, like Josh Allen. I've watched him the last 3 weeks, and I'm like, I'm kind of out on him. Like Lamar Jackson's MVP. Now people are like, he can't throw up the sideline. Like,
we have no patience for the quarterback position anymore,
and not much for coaches either. I mean, there's
look how quickly everyone turned on Sean McVay.
Oh my God! I mean, 2 years ago, if you bumped into him at a food court, you got a head coaching job.
Yes.
Literally, if you were in a selfie with Sean at Starbucks, you're like, that guy's coach of the Bengals. Now everybody's like, yeah, he's got kind of you can figure it out. Yeah, he likes Goff way more than he should. So, to me, if you're Shanahan, I think you just have to, at some point, like Peter King said yesterday, they played Green Bay in the playoffs last year. He threw 8 times. That's like Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins. Mike Zimmer's telling you, I just don't want him to throw. So at that point, I like Garoppolo, but after that game, I can no longer... I'm on a losing side. The coach doesn't want him to throw. It doesn't matter what I say as a TV guy. Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Well, also, availability, I think, is a skill.
Hey,
like, it's no one's fault you get injured. Certain people take care of their body better than other people, and that may play a role in it. But some people are just injury prone, and once that's the book on you, it's very hard to get away from that.
Okay, prime example. The knock on Aaron Rodgers has been, by Packer fans, he holds the ball too long. He's had more injuries. The knock on Eli was he threw too many picks. Why? Because he never held the ball. So Eli never got hurt. Eli had an absolute skill. He just let go of the ball. Now, you got more picks with him, but you got 2 Super Bowls. So there is, to your point, is the knock on Aaron has been he holds it too long. If you go look at the last collarbone injury, he's rolling out play. Dude, get it out. Throw it out.
So Tua's first NFL start wasn't grand, even though the Dolphins got the win. He was hit by Aaron Donald and fumbled on his first drop back of the game last week, and the offensive line wants to step up for their rookie quarterback. Guard Solomon Kinley said he and his teammates are making a point of giving Tua a better chance this week at Arizona, and they want to be perfect for him.
Fascinating.
The offensive line ranks 26th in pass blocking and 31st.
No, it's bad. It's the weakness. It's the weakness of the team. It's their. And by the way, I love Arizona in this game. It is the weakness for Miami, their O-line.
Well, the Cardinals' defense is 9th in points allowed per game at 20.9 and tied for 22nd in yards allowed per game, 378.4. They do have 2 rookies starting on the offensive line this year, Solomon Kinley and Robert Hunt. Ted Karras is in his 5th year, Eric Flowers in his 6th year at left guard, and Jesse Davis in his 4th year at left tackle. So they're relatively young offensive line.
Yeah.
But I do like that he said this and that this is a focus of theirs. I mean, sometimes, you just need to get a little bit of rhythm going and flow.
I would argue that if you like who you're blocking for, Tua's incredibly likable. Everybody loves him. He ingratiates himself to any kind of person. It's not like Jay Cutler. After a while, I was wondering if guys were like, why don't you step right on by me and take him out? Like, there are guys that you won't hold that block for quite as long.
I mean, I don't like to get too far into the, emotion of it and, drive and, the relationships and all that you're talking about. But there is something to it. I mean, there is something to in the heat of competition, like the man next to you and the man that you're guarding, you have a little bit more of a relationship with. Yes. It might make you play a little bit harder. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that they weren't playing hard for Fitzpatrick. But as a team, he is a leader. Intangibles matter. We know that. So I'm really interested in these next 2 games for the Dolphins. All of the critique that we've had of Tua in one game, to be measured up against his peers in the next 2 games could go one way or the other for Tua very quickly.
We've all had bosses or parents we don't want to disappoint. There's no question our effort and our focus can be affected by who we're performing for.
Yeah, that's there's no doubt. So the Packers are likely to go into tonight's game against the 49ers without their top 3 running backs. Aaron Rodgers, though, is confident they'll find other ways to win.
Well, I think as a competitor, you're always excited about the challenges. You love having your guys in there at full strength, for sure. But, yeah, there is that fun challenge of going in there without some of those guys and trying to find a way to win. I think that's the beauty in what Matt and the offensive staff has done this year is just find creative ways to get our best guys in the field and put them in positions to get the ball in space. No different this week.
So, A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams are on the COVID list. Aaron Jones is questionable with a calf injury, so Tyler Ervin and Dexter Williams are the 2 running backs left.
They're fine.
Tonight.
If you make an NFL roster, last week was Seattle. They had DJ Dallas, a rookie from Miami, the Hurricanes. He was their 4th running back, and I was like, I think he had a blocking mistake. But I was like, if that's the 4th best running back for Seattle, DJ Dallas, I'm like, he can play. He had a nice catch. If that's the 4th best running back a team has, DJ Dallas, then these guys for Green Bay can play a little.
Well, I mean, to Aaron's point, as an offensive staff, you know what the situation is. This isn't like a surprise to you. So you try to do the best you can to put the guys that you have with the skills that they have in the best opportunity to succeed. Now, luckily for Green Bay, unfortunately for the 49ers, 49ers have no one. They are decimated with injuries on top of losing skill positions to the COVID list. So this is going to be, I don't know what to expect tonight because I just have this weird, I know you think it's going to be a blowout, but I just have this weird feeling about
Well, if I'm the Niners, I want to make it totally ugly.
Yeah.
I just want to make it, I want to have Mullins, I want to run the ball. I will say this, San Francisco's offensive line is pretty good. 2 really good tackles. And so Mullins and Green Bay's pass rush is hit and miss. Their linebackers are average. You could see a game in which Shanahan uglies it up. They run the ball, and they just play a little bit of keep away. But at the end, Aaron's going to get too many opportunities Oh, Trent Williams is not playing? Oh, he's on the COVID list. Well, forget what I just said.
Well, I mean, but it is a low-key kind of pride game for San Francisco because I mean, their season is essentially over, and it's not, again,
well, it will be after tonight.
Not anyone's fault, but, you know, this is a rematch, and so there could be a little bit of emotion going in there, and I know that Shanahan is going to game plan for that as well. So J.J. Watt has been one of the stars in Houston since he was drafted in 2011, and he's experienced some success as a Texan, but the team is in a down year and fired Bill O'Brien, and Watt is frustrated about the possibility of being stuck in a rebuild.
Thank you.
He said, I don't think it's any secret that I don't have 10 years left in this league. I personally believe that I do have a few more great ones left in me. I'm not looking to rebuild. I'm looking to go after a championship, and that's what I want to do. So whatever is in the best interest of the Houston Texans, that's in the best interest of myself.
This is, to me, I just don't... Thank God J.J. Watt gets it. Like, if I ran okay, I want to be a GM. I run the Houston Texans. I move him. I would have moved him at the trading deadline.
Yeah.
You move him to somebody, because I think Seattle, if you gave him to Seattle this morning, I picked them to win the Super Bowl. That's because I'm not looking for 10 years. I'm looking for the rest of this year and next year. I just don't think Seattle has any cap space, because they're paying Jamal and Bobby and Russell Wilson. They got heavy at the top. But this is, to me, what they need in Houston: draft picks and cap space. And you can get both moving J.J. Watt. And he could also, he's been too great of a player. I want to see him on a great team in a playoff game.
Yes, and I like that he's not romantically tied to the Texans, because I get that. I always understand that. But to your point, J.J. Watt is an all-time great player. Can we just see him in an opportunity where he's going to at least have an opportunity to win a championship?
Yeah.
And it's no, it's nothing about the Texans particularly, like, things just played out the wrong way. I don't think that Bill O'Brien was a terrible coach. They had some success there. I just think he took on more than he needed to, or more than he should have.
Yeah.
They have their quarterback of the future. You have a couple pieces. So he's right. It's a rebuild.
I'll tell you a team this doesn't make any sense, but I'll just throw it out there. LA Chargers. I got to face Mahomes twice a year. I've got Ingram. I've got Bosa. I don't know if they can afford to pay Ingram forever. I'd go get J.J. Watt. You're not going to be... If you want to win shootouts with Mahomes, it can sound fun. But the one way to change that rivalry is J.J. Watt, Bosa, and Ingram. The best pass rush in football. That's what kept Mahomes down for 3 quarters in the Super Bowl. If I'm the Chargers, I already like their defensive front. I bring in Watt. I bring him in for a year and a half, and I say, we're going to change the dynamic of the Mahomes games. Is that I got a kid that can win a shootout, but now we're going to have the best defensive line in football if it made financial sense.
Well, step one is winning your division. So, with Mahomes in your division, that should be your number one priority.
Well, when you had Peyton Manning or Brady in your division, the way to beat Peyton Manning was always edge rusher. The way to beat Brady, that's why Buffalo overpaid for Mario Williams. It's why the Jets, everybody built a defensive line for 20 years against New England. It's the only way you were going to beat them. Who's that? Jason Taylor. So, to me, with Mahomes, it's like, that's why the Raiders, when they beat the Chiefs, it's great, but you got to have somebody beyond Max Crosby that can rush the passer. Otherwise, Mahomes he's going to be scoring 36 against you for the next 10 years.
And if you can't do that back, you have no chance.
That's right.
Yeah.
Enjoy the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
One of the 5 best left tackles of all time. He played for the Cleveland Browns. Not a lot of winning teams, but it wasn't on Joe Thomas. Odell Beckham Jr., the GM's talking about him. Baker Mayfield, the team is talking about him. I still see the Browns as a playoff team. I do. I think it's now becoming the best division in football, because Cincinnati's not even an easy out. I think the NFC West and the AFC North, it's just nothing but talent. I think those are the 2 most talented divisions in football. Joe Thomas, the All-Pro multiple times, will be a first ballot Hall of Famer joining us next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Extremely active. Brothers and sisters, you already know what it is. The Gangster Chronicles. The land. From Oregon all the way down to Mexico. To all my SA brothers and sisters, viva la raza.
The Gangster Chronicles is a weekly podcast hosted by former gangbanger and inmate James McDonald, rapper MC8, and myself, Norm Steele. Weekly we get together and have conversations with everyone from former gangsters, drug dealers, and bank robbers to police, rappers, and politicians. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is a glimpse into a world where society is rarely allowed access. Nothing is ever scripted and it's 100% real. We don't glorify the game, we simply educate and inform the world on what goes on in the streets of urban America. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Gangster Chronicles is brought to you by the Brothers Act Podcast Network.
Hey there, it's Mango, host of Part-Time Genius, co-founder of Mental Floss, and like many of you, I'm one of the 21 million people that have picked up gardening in the past 6 months. That's why I'm hosting the brand new podcast, Humans Growing Stuff, brought to you by iHeartMedia and your friends at Miracle Grow. Join me on a green adventure as we talk with experts, friends, and surprise guests, and hear what gardening means to them. Listen to Humans Growing Stuff on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Time to change your wireless provider. Pure Talk gives you unlimited talk, unlimited text, and 2 gigs of data, $20 a month. That's it. Grab your phone, mobile phone, dial pound 250 and say my name, Colin Coward, and you're good. So this is interesting. I didn't grow up in a world of nostalgia. Okay, I didn't. So I'm not a romantic that way. Like I don't have baseball cards, and I didn't go to church as a kid. I didn't go to a same camp every year. And it was interesting. I'm a West Coast kid. When I moved east and I lived in Connecticut, you're around Boston, a great history, and Hartford and New York. And it was really fascinating. It was kind of a turn on. I would watch these people who grew up and they went to the same summer camp for 30 years, and they had the same address for 40 years and the same church for 40 years, and they went to the same vacation place on Cape Cod for 30 years. That is not me. So those kind of people I always thought loved baseball, because baseball is all about romanticizing the past. That's why so many Northeast people, because the history of the Northeast is so rich. It is so inarguable. It is so rich. The same camp, the same summer home, the same church, the same friends. Your grandpa goes to a college, then dad goes to it, and then you go to it, and then your kids go to it. So I'm not a nostalgia person. I've moved off Drew Brees. I've moved off OBJ. He's missed 30 games. He's hurt and expensive. But I do get where a lot of people are still holding on to the OBJ thing and the Drew Brees thing. But it's funny. My life experience is why I just move off people. I'm not as loyal as other sports fans. Like the minute I see, Russell Wilson twist an ankle in 5 years, boom, I'm done. I can still like you as a friend, but I'm not nostalgic that way. It's not how I was raised. It's not the environment I had. Joe Thomas is one of the best left tackles in the history of football. His first 10 years in the NFL, he was a Pro Bowler all 10 years. He's going to get into the Hall of Fame, and he is now joining us live. So it is funny, my thing with I'm not a romantic, because I didn't grow up with that, right? And so I look at OBJ and I'm like, he's hurt a lot, he's expensive, and in New York and Cleveland, I don't think he made the teams necessarily better. I just thought he was great. But I know there are people, do you feel this morning in Cleveland, is there a loyalty to him, to the Browns, and to the Brown fan base? Or do you think a lot of people are like, hey man, it's over, it didn't work?
I think there's a little bit of a loyalty thing with the Browns, because I think you've seen the best version of Odell Beckham with the Cleveland Browns from a personality and a buy-in and a team standpoint. And I don't think that was the guy that you saw when he was with the Giants. And so I think in Cleveland, they really feel like Odell has put his heart and soul into the Browns team, into his performance. Now, it's come up short, certainly, of where the expectations were when they traded for him, but they definitely feel like there's a little bit of loyalty built in there, because Odell really has poured a lot of himself emotionally into this Browns franchise.
I do think, Joe, that you have to, in the NFL, for instance, when Peyton Manning was in the AFC South, everybody in the division went out and tried to get pass rushers, because you knew you were going to face Peyton for 10 years, right? Like that's the reality of it. Big Ben is in your division, you better get pass rushers, because if you give him time. And so I do look at the Cleveland Browns, and Joe Burrow has been better than I would have ever imagined. Does it make Cleveland a tad nervous knowing now we got Ben twice a year, now Lamar twice a year? Oh my God, Burrow looks like a star. Could that end up not being helpful to Baker Mayfield going forward, that you can't win your division if you have the fourth best quarterback, right?
Well, I think it certainly puts a lot more pressure on Baker Mayfield, because for a while there, it was always like, okay, yeah, we know the Bengals are kind of that team in the AFC North that you're going to be able to beat them if you play decent football. And now all of a sudden, they've got this quarterback who's playing really good football and whose sky is really the limit at this point. And so for Baker now, he's got to be on his best game when they go against the Bengals in order to get that victory. And you got to assume, if the trend line heads in the same direction for Joe Burrow, that he's going to be one of these Pro Bowl type guys just probably by next season. And so I think for Baker Mayfield to have Big Ben, Lamar Jackson, and now one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL also in your division, that certainly puts a lot of pressure on him being at his best every single week, because you're going to play those teams in your division 2 times every single season. And then if you get to the playoffs, a lot of times you might even see them again there.
You did not miss a single game in your career until your final year. And I've always thought that some people, I've covered pro and college teams and NBA teams. Some guys get hurt. And I like Jimmy Garoppolo, but he got hurt in New England, and he got hurt in San Francisco, and he's hurt again. And Joe, you've been around this league. Some guys, the DNA, genetic, they get hurt more. Like, I think in San Francisco this morning, Joe, you're not going to say it publicly, but I think you got to move on in that division with Russell Wilson and Kyler. I mean, you look at Garoppolo. Isn't he now an injury-prone player?
Well, I think you have to be realistic if you're the 49ers, right? Jimmy G's been great for them when he's been available. He's 22-8 as the starter. Took him to the Super Bowl, and they were right on the cusp of being Super Bowl champions. He may have been the MVP, but when you look at a quarterback, you've got to have that guy in the field. He's by far the most important position on the field, and availability a lot of times is the most important ability when you're talking about that quarterback position, because you can't put a ton of resources in the backup quarterback position, and no matter who you put back there, a lot of times you're not going to be able to continue the same performance on offense with the backup. And so for Jimmy G, while he has played well and he has led their team to a pretty solid record, and obviously they were expecting really big things from this year, when you get injured over and over and over again and you have these wasted seasons like the Niners have had with Jimmy G, they got to start asking the tough question. I think what they're going to do is they're going to use the rest of the season that they don't have Jimmy G here until he comes back from that ankle injury and kind of evaluate what that team looks like in his absence and try to figure out, hey, maybe there's an opportunity to upgrade in this offseason, because they do have a front-loaded contract with Jimmy G. So they can get out from under that and they can dump him at the end of the season without huge cap implications. And depending on where they are in the draft and depending on where the quarterbacks are at the end of this season, they might have an opportunity to make their team better with somebody else not named Jimmy G.
You went through a lot of quarterbacks in Cleveland. Are you surprised how good Herbert is, Burrow is? Are you surprised? These guys didn't even have a training camp. They didn't have preseason. I mean, Joe, you went through a lot of quarterbacks. Are you a little shocked by how good they are?
Well, I'm surprised and I'm a little jealous, right? I played for 20-some quarterbacks during my career. I played for all sorts of rookies, and hardly any of them ever had the success that all these young guys are having this year. And I would have bet my house, without OTAs, without training camp, that all these young quarterbacks were going to struggle mightily, especially the guys that don't make the off-schedule plays. Because when you're making off-schedule plays like the Lamar Jackson, like the Russell Wilson, when he was a younger player, you can overcome not understanding what the scheme is on offense that you're trying to run. You can overcome not being able to diagnose the blitzes and the coverages, because if you run around long enough, somebody's going to get open and you can make a play. But a lot of these guys are making plays in the pocket, in rhythm. They're reading coverages. They're going through their progressions. They've really impressed me so far this season, and that was probably one of the big bright spots for the NFL, is the performance of these rookie quarterbacks thus far in the NFL season.
I totally agree. Now, Joe is part of the NFL Network. I'll watch him tonight, Packers-Niners. You're going to see him on the NFL Network's Thursday Night Football Crew, 7:30 Eastern kickoff. You do a great job, great sense of humor on that show, Joe, and we appreciate you stopping by today.
Thanks for having me on, Colin.
You bet. No, I think it's, it just, the whole OBJ thing. I was saying this to the staff this morning. He reminds me a little of Derrick Rose. So he comes in, we're all like, whoa, this guy is explosive. And then there's some injuries. And there's still something there, but now it's expensive and not available and not quite as explosive. And people still love Derrick Rose, and people will love OBJ, and he'll come back and play. It's an ACL. He'll come back and play. But I do think is you have to be careful about nostalgia in pro football. You just got to be really careful about it. I always thought when I lived out east, the reason baseball is so popular in the Northeast, because baseball is about history and tradition, and the Northeast, it just blew me away, is so cool. The prep schools, the churches, I mean, there's nothing like it in the country. Like the Maines and the Vermonts. Like, I get why people in the Northeast love going to Fenway. It takes them back to their childhood. It takes them back to days with Grandpa. I'm from Seattle. We had a baseball team, we lost it. We got it back, they're terrible. We don't have these prep schools and Hogwarts, and I didn't grow up in nostalgia, so I'm always kind of willing to just, the guy was good, he's no longer good, let's move on. OBJ will get another shot. He will, but I just don't think Cleveland fits. Brady Quinn, Notre Dame, Clemson, we're talking about last hour.
I'm Mandy B, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
And I'm Wheezy, former tech exec turned podcaster and comedy writer. We're the hosts of the Horrible Decisions podcast. Through laughter and education, we work to destigmatize kinks, normalize conversations that are taboo, like sex, dating, relationships. Check us out every Monday.
That's right. Don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, the #1 app for podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's Cody Koch here. You may know me from Vine, YouTube, or as the co-host of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. But my brand new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, presented by Trojan Brand Condoms, is out right now. Join me and a celebrity guest on each episode as we try to right the wrongs of bad advice on topics ranging from work to sex to social media. Here's a little preview from my chat with Tim Dillon. What do you seek out in a partner?
I want someone impressed by what I do, which is so unhealthy. I want someone impressed that I'm on this show.
Yeah.
You did a podcast with Cody Ko. That's big. He's got a trillion gajillion followers on whatever app. He's on Ding Dong.
On TikTok.
Whatever it is.
On Ding Dong.
Zip Zop or whatever the kids are on.
My advice to you right now, go listen to my new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hey everyone, it's Cody Koch here. You may know me from Vine, YouTube, or as the co-host of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. But my brand new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, presented by Trojan Brand Condoms, is out right now. Here's a little preview from my chat with Tim Dillon. What do you seek out in a partner?
I want someone impressed that I'm on this show.
Yeah.
You did a podcast with Cody Ko. That's big. He's got a trillion gajillion followers on Ding Dong.
On TikTok.
Whatever it is.
On Ding Dong.
Zip Zop or whatever the kids are on.
My advice to you right now, go listen to my new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Do flowers have best friends? I don't know. Hey, look. Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Bears vs. Titans is featured in this week's free-to-play Super 6 contest. All you have to do is correctly predict the outcome of 6 NFL games. So get your picks in before kickoff Sunday for your chance to be a millionaire. And for top stories, scores, and more, go to the Fox Sports app. Colin, Bears Titans is one of the matchups this week. Give us your winner and final score.
Titans by a touchdown. I don't know what in God's name to do with Tennessee. I loved them for 8 straight games last year, this year.
Yeah.
They lose close to a good Pittsburgh team. And then, but the only pick I missed last week, Blazing 5, I take them, and they're terrible. They are terrible against Cincinnati. So what am I to make of them? Do I not like the Titans? I almost feel like they played the Steelers, and there was such an emotional letdown to get ready for a crappy team. So I think they're going to kind of reboot and go, okay, guys, let's not forget who we are. We're well coached, we're physical, we run the ball. I think I like Tennessee, but when you watch that game last week, they didn't even, they stayed on the bus. They were terrible in that game. And I think you play the Steelers, and it's this big physical rivalry, and then you're flying to Cincinnati. You're like, let's get in, get out, and all of a sudden Cincinnati's one of the games of the year.
Yep.
So I think Tennessee's still good.
Yeah, I think they're still good too.
All right, so because the Steelers haven't had a stinker like that.
The problem for Tennessee is the Bears are not a bad team.
No, they're
They
awful
can make
to watch.
it very ugly, and
they're so Chicago.
3 L's in a row for the Titans.
Just defense and tough, and that's what a Chicago Bear football team should look like. No flash.
We'd love for Chicago to evolve a little bit, but yes, they can do that.
Hey everyone, it's Cody Ko here. You may know me from Vine, YouTube, or as the co-host of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. But my brand new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, presented by Trojan Brand Condoms, is out right now. Here's a little preview from my chat with Tim Dillon. What do you seek out in a partner?
I want someone impressed that I'm on this show.
Yeah.
You did a podcast with Cody Ko. That's big. He's got a trillion gajillion followers on Ding Dong.
On TikTok.
Whatever it is.
On Ding Dong.
Zip Zop or whatever the kids are on.
My advice to you right now, go listen to my new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Extremely active. Brothers and sisters, you already know what it is. The Gangster Chronicles. The land. From Oregon all the way down to Mexico. To all my SA brothers and sisters, viva la raza.
The Gangster Chronicles is a weekly podcast hosted by former gangbanger and inmate James McDonald, rapper MC8, and myself, Norm Steele. Weekly we get together and have conversations with everyone from former gangsters, drug dealers, and bank robbers to police rappers and politicians. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is a glimpse into a world where society is rarely allowed access. Nothing is ever scripted and it's 100% real. We don't glorify the gang, we simply educate and inform the world on what goes on in the streets of urban America. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Gangster Chronicles is brought to you by the Front of That Podcast Network.
Interesting game.
I gotta read this. Pure Talk USA. Get your phone, dial pound 250, and say Colin Coward, $20 a month. Wireless, $20 a month. That's a good deal there. Pure Talk USA. Simply smarter wireless. Joy Taylor with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Odell's time in Cleveland has not gone the way that the team would have hoped. That has brought up a lot of questions about his future there, and GM Andrew Berry is sick of hearing those questions.
I would say, to me, and respectfully, Nate, I feel like I've answered this question enough. Odell is one of the best receivers in the NFL. He played really good football for us before he was injured. Our focus with Odell is making sure that he recovers from the ACL tear. Like, we wanted him to be healthy and ready to go next year. But we're pleased.
Well, respectfully, that's what happens when you have a superstar in the building. People want to ask questions about it.
Yeah, that you have to consider that when you acquire a superstar.
Yes. Yeah.
If they get hurt, there's going to be that. That's always been one of the things in the building that, especially a receiver, and it's a perimeter player, and they're flashier. Like when you bring in superstars, that's why you always want to under-promise, over-deliver. Like when Baker comes in with all the commercials, we're probably way more critical on Baker because he's put himself out there. Yeah. Whereas there's a lot of defenders of Darnold who's been humble and quiet. When Mark Sanchez, I remember, went to the Jets and he did a GQ thing. And I remember at the time I was at the other place and I was like, I don't love that. Like, dude, you got to win a game, get through camp before I see your abs. Like, under-promise, over-deliver, and superstars do bring a certain temperature into the building.
Well, for Baker or for, Sanchez or Darnold or Burrow or any quarterback that's coming into the league, and that's a different position, obviously, so there's different expectations, different coverage, different, opportunities given to the face of the franchise. Well, yeah. Odell is an NBA player in the NFL.
He was a first, yeah.
So
shoe deal.
When he comes to your organization,
ready for it.
Yes. And if he gets injured, there's going to be questions every day.
Yep.
What's the update on Odell? Every day. That's how it works. And that's why I never thought this Odell thing in Cleveland was going to work.
Yeah,
because Odell is there is only one Odell. Whatever you think of what his career has been again and his injuries and whatnot. We saw what Odell can be when Odell is healthy and he's with someone who can get him the ball and in a situation that works for him. We saw it in New York. That's why Odell is what Odell is. There's no manufacturing that. It's like you can have it with the biggest personality, you can make all the catches, you can have all the records. There is just something about stars. It's something about Cam Newton. Not quite sure what it is, but he's captivating. Whether he's good, whether he's bad, whether he's playing, whether he's not playing. How much did we talk about Cam Newton this offseason when there was no sports going on? Like almost every day. And he hadn't played in how long? So yes, you're going to get asked questions about it, but this is all the more reason why I don't think Odell ever fit in Cleveland. I hope for Odell's sake and for Cleveland's sake, because it just doesn't work, that he's somewhere else next year where he's able to thrive. I still believe he has great football left in him. This was just never the situation for him, and obviously no one can plan for this kind of injury, but hopefully he recovers. And that injury at this point is, I mean, ACL is a standard injury at this point. It's not like it's Achilles and you're not sure how he's going to come back. So the Bills started the season strong with 4 straight wins, another very confusing team. They've not played at the same level since that winning streak ended. They host the Seahawks this weekend, and Josh Allen is prepared for a battle as they try to slow down Russell Wilson.
We understand how well the Seahawks are playing and how well the quarterback Russell Wilson is playing there, and we got no small task this coming week. They're top in a lot of statistical categories on the offensive side of the ball, and we got to make sure that we're doing our part to try to keep them off the field as much as possible. But they got some very opportunistic guys on defense, and they're forcing a lot of turnovers. So it's going to be a 4-quarter dogfight. We understand that.
It's interesting. Seattle would really like the number 1 seed. I mean, everybody would, but Seattle's had running back injury issues now for a calendar year. Wouldn't it be great to have 14 days off? So this number 1 seed is a big game for Seattle. Seattle's a team that has a history. Pete's teams are aggressive. Last year, injuries derailed the season. This year, they can't keep running backs healthy. So for Seattle, I can see because I think Jamal Adams is ready to play. And I've been told Peter Schrager told me this, that Pete Carroll basically said, dude, we want you 100% healthy. We're not going to risk it because I honestly think Seattle has more ceiling than any good team in the NFL, even Kansas City.
Well, to your point, this is a really, really big game. Not just for Seattle, but also for the Bills.
Yeah, because Miami is now looking like a playoff team.
Miami's right there, and while I agree with you, I'm leaning a little bit towards Arizona this weekend because I think they're going to let Tua play a little bit more and take a little bit more risk. They started the season obviously 4-0, then they got thumped by the Titans, then they lost to the Chiefs convincingly, barely beat the Jets, and obviously we know what happened last week with the Patriots.
No, I mean, the last 2 weeks I've watched the Buffalo Bills, the offense has been... Last week, Cam Newton doesn't fumble. They can't beat a New England team that appears to be just rebooting.
It's a very interesting game. Like, I don't know that it's going to necessarily be a 4th-quarter dogfight. Like, that's going to be more on the Bills because Seattle is a better team. Obviously, it's on the road, but Seattle's favored by 3 according to Fox Bet. So that's a big game this weekend. Lots of big games this weekend, actually. So the 49ers lost even more key players ahead of tonight's game with the Packers. Wide receiver Kendrick Bourne tested positive this week, and receiver Brandon Ayuk and left tackle Trent Williams were close contacts of his, so all 3 are on the COVID list and unavailable tonight. That leaves San Francisco without any of the 7 players who had an offensive touch when they faced Green Bay in the NFC Championship game last season. And here is a list of notable players out for the 49ers tonight. Sorry to our radio listeners, but I won't bore you.
It's a 15
very, very
people.
long.
Seriously. All the good ones are out.
Literally insane.
Just name the position. Quarterback, tight end, running back, wide receiver, left tackle. It's probably going to struggle to score.
I know that it seems like it's hopeless tonight, but I still have a weird feeling about tonight's game. I mean, Green Bay is just... I don't know. I just don't know. I'm very interested to see how it goes tonight.
What's the line on this? What's the line on this? I'm going to have some fun and bet this game tonight. What is it? Okay, I'm going to bet a fortune on Green Bay. It's 7.5 Fox bet. I'm going to take the Packers to win by 10. The only way to make this thing fun with all the injuries, I'm betting...
Can they stop the run?
Stop it enough. I like Green Bay to win by 10. Make the game fun. Go bet Fox bet. Make it fun. Make it fun. I bet the game. What else? You're not going to watch election coverage. We're all exhausted.
We don't know, and we're not going to find out tonight anyway.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Brady Quinn's patiently been waiting. He is so good. Fox Sports, NFL and college analyst, is now joining us via the Coward Global Satellite Network. All right, let's start with Clemson, Notre Dame. Great to see you again. What worries me, I've said this about college football. I love college football. But I do think something, Joel Klatt and I have talked about this, it worries me. It's becoming a three-horse race. It is Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, and maybe the second best SEC team. Notre Dame, to me, is about the fifth or sixth best team in college football, and I feel like there's a gap between those teams. I think it's imperative that Notre Dame wins this weekend. I think it's good for the sport. I think Clemson's missing a defensive lineman. Can Notre Dame win this week? If they can't, it's discouraging to me because this game feels like Notre Dame's got a real shot. Can they compete?
No, they can compete, and they can win this game. I mean, look, not having Trevor Lawrence, who, if you go back to the last time these two teams played, the semifinal game, that was what really hurt them. But that game was a lot closer than the scoreboard actually indicated. If you go back and look at that game, with 5 minutes left in the second quarter, their All-American cornerback, Julian Love, went out. Clemson got two quick strikes, and it started to kind of snowball after that. But it really wasn't quite as uncompetitive as it looked, at least based on the scoreboard, and especially not as bad as it looked in the national championship game when Clemson beat Bama. This time around, they don't have that experience or the confidence with Trevor Lawrence, but they do have DJ Uiagalelei, who looked really good, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
For a freshman, his first start, he's got a big arm, he's athletic. The thing that stood out to me the most was his timing. I mean, for a guy who's a freshman, to throw 3 steps, plant, throw a ball out before the receiver's out of his head.
He's good.
It was impressive.
Yes.
It really was. But I don't know that they're going to hang their hat on him making a bunch of throws to the outside versus the Notre Dame secondary. It's going to be about whether or not Notre Dame's defense can stop Travis Etienne. If they can stop him, put this entire game on DJ's shoulders, and then control the game on offense with their rushing attack, their stable of running backs, but also Ian Book is a part of that, I don't think it's not being just competitive. I think there's no doubt they can win, and I think they need to win this matchup because most likely they're going to play Clemson again in the ACC championship game based on how the ACC is going to play it this year. So this has to be the right time. You've got them at home. You've got a backup quarterback playing his inexperienced, his first road start. This has to be the time that you do it. And you mentioned Tyler Davis, their D tackle, probably one of their better guys up front. He probably will be out. And then Skalski, we don't know if he'll play or not. Him next to Spector, those really two are the leaders of the linebacker position. If he's out too, that's another big loss. That's another opportunity, I think, for Notre Dame to dominate on the ground. And then keep in mind this. They don't have necessarily a ton of speed to beat Clemson on the outside. Michael Mayer, their freshman tight end, he is that next Rob Gronkowski type, big athletic guy. He started to emerge there too as that pass threat, I think, for Ian Book.
By the way, we're looking at Brian Kelly video right here. Brady Quinn is joining me. And I've said this. Tom Coughlin came into the NFL, and he went to New York. And he'd get all worked up, and his face would get all red, and he would yell and yell and yell. And then the owners of the Giants said, Tom, you got to take a deep breath here. You're wearing guys out. And Tom Coughlin did, to his credit. So Brian Kelly comes into college football, and Brian, he's at these small colleges. We don't watch these games. And then he's at Notre Dame, and he's yelling and screaming. But I got to tell you something. I think he's Notre Dame's best coach since Lou Holtz. I'm a huge fan. I don't know how long he wants to be the Notre Dame coach because it's a lot of work. But as a Notre Damer, as a Domer, I think Notre Dame's got more talent now than they have had in 15 years. Now, I don't think they're Clemson. I don't think they're Ohio State. But also, I think academically, Notre Dame it's got a little Stanford feel. It's a harder place to recruit to. It's got, for obvious reasons. But what do Domers think about Brian Kelly today?
No, I think they think he's a good football coach. He's got the resume with the exception of a national championship. I mean, if you look at his total wins, his win percentage, you factor into all those things. You mentioned the recruiting. I think one of the biggest things he's done is he's realized what the identity is at Notre Dame. They can get any offensive lineman, any tight end they want in the country because that's what they're shipping off into the NFL. That's why you see so many guys now making big money, so they can recruit all those positions. And then the skill positions, as you mentioned, that depends on, I think, the family. It depends on what that individual wants out of their education, if they care about their education. because the workload at Notre Dame is tough. But it will be rewarding later on in your life after football. And I think he's gotten some of those guys. Chris Tyree, for example, he's got a ton of speed. Their freshman running back, he's a guy they're going to rely on this week. And there's a number of guys you can kind of throw into that conversation. So he is recruited to their identity, and I think that's one of the more stronger suits he's had. And also, look at his staff. I mean, they moved on from Chip Long. They hired Tommy Rees, a former quarterback there, the former quarterback coach. He's done a tremendous job, I think, again, hanging their hat on what their identity is, putting in things to make their quarterback Ian Book comfortable. Clark Lee is one of the better defensive minds, too. The way he's gone about handling this staff, too, I think it should be noted, and he should be applauded for how he's managed that entire group, not just the players in the team.
So you know college football is different than the NFL. Justin Herbert wasn't a 5-star recruit, and he looks unbelievable in the NFL. And then Tua's a 5-star best ever, and I watched him last week, and he looks a little small. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle athletically. You tell me, what will be the first thing you look at Tua, Brady? The first time you look at him and you go, ooh, red flag. I'm worried about that. Because Justin Herbert, I can figure it out. That's going to work in the NFL. What will be something you see with Tua and you think, that worries me?
Well, first off, let me just answer by saying this. As good as Herbert has looked, it's his first year. So even though he's got the athleticism, the size, the big arm, the football IQ, we've seen him how well he's been able to perform so far. It's his first year. We were saying this about Carson Wentz now. Remember, Pennsylvania, after his first 3 starts, they had that early bye. After the first 3 games, they started 3-0 his rookie year. We were all saying the same thing. So let's not jump to too many conclusions here. But in regards to Tua, it's not his size, because we knew he was small coming into it. He's got a lightning quick release, good touch and all that. I think my concern is if he's going to be able to adapt to the NFL game. And what I mean in saying that is one of the things that made Tua so special at Alabama was his ability to create, buy time, and then make some big throws down the field. You can't quite do it the same at the NFL level. And so we didn't have to see him do that last week versus the Rams because their defense played so darn well, and they had to return for a touchdown, so he wasn't really called to do a lot. This week versus Arizona, different situation. Doesn't have 2 weeks to prepare like he did versus the Rams. He's taken on an offense that I think is going to be a big-time challenge for the Dolphins defense, which, by the way, is the #1 scoring defense right now in the NFL. I'm not sure anyone knew that. So, even though that'll be a challenge for the Cardinals, they're going to put up some points. They're going to put pressure on Tua and that offense to put up some points. It won't be as easy as what it was versus the Rams last week. So how does he handle that situation? Does he press? Does he make bad decisions? And how is he going to handle a defense now that's at least got a game of watching him under their belt to see some of his tendencies? And Vance Joseph's done a tremendous job with this defense. Keep an eye on Budda Baker, the way they move him around, the way he will impact this game. It's going to be a big challenge. So I'm more curious to see how he handles himself. And if he tries to scramble around too much, ends up taking unnecessary hits and unnecessary losses, putting them behind the chains.
By the way, that freshman quarterback for Clemson, I'm so proud of you that you got his name, because his name, it's not the easiest name. That is amazing. So when we watch the video, I'm not an NFL scout, but when you were talking about that kid, and we're showing those throws, I'm sorry, Brady. That is one of the most talented 18-year-old. I saw a game last year in Southern California. I saw his highlights. He was the #1 high school player in the country. That kid, I mean, just as you watch it, just talk. Look at those skills. Look at some of these throws. And then he's incredible.
That's blitz 0, by the way. So that was an all-out blitz on that first touchdown pass to Travis Etienne, and he was able to recognize it, find Etienne, and ends up being a touchdown later on. But that's kind of the mental aspect of it that he brings to it. He actually made a throw in this, Colin, that you're not going to see in a highlight because it was an incompletion. They had a double moves on the outside. He looked left the whole time. He wanted it, didn't like it. He flipped his hips, turned right back around, fired it down the field on the right side. It was on a dime. Perfectly thrown football. They ended up getting a pass interference on the play, but the ball was incomplete. But I was more wowed by that than any other completion he had the entire game. He really does have the entire package. I think the only thing that you could be critical about is they're all fastballs, man. He's got to develop that second base and learn to use a little bit of touch because that thing comes out of his hand hot. But he showed the ability to work through progressions, identify what the defense was trying to do, the athleticism, the timing. He's a special player. Dare I say, Clemson's going to be able to hang around for a while, even after Trevor Lawrence leaves.
Man, I just love watching him play. That kid is just special. Brady Quinn, good seeing you, buddy.
Yeah, always fun being on. Thank you.
You bet. All sorts of good. He's just Brady is terrific. All right, what's my game I'm playing next? It's called Tua beats Hua. How do I think Tua does the rest of the year in his games? He beat the Rams. Tua beats Hua. Tua beats Hua.
Oh, Tua beats Tua. Okay.
A little corny today. It's okay. We all need to lighten up these days.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Hey there, it's Mango, host of Part-Time Genius, co-founder of Mental Floss, and like many of you, I'm one of the 21 million people that have picked up gardening in the past 6 months. That's why I'm hosting the brand new podcast, Humans Growing Stuff, brought to you by iHeartMedia and your friends at Miracle Grow. Join me on a green adventure as we talk with experts, friends, and surprise guests, and hear what gardening means to them. Listen to Humans Growing Stuff on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mandy B, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
I'm Wheezy, former tech exec, now podcaster, comedy writer, and I make up half of the Horrible Decisions podcast. We combine comedy, raunchiness, all in effort to destigmatize kinks and normalize conversations that are normally taboo, like sex, dating, and relationships. Make sure you tune in this Monday so you can hear conversations like these.
He sets up the phone, he bends over in the, y'all want to see it?
No. We have never suggested cheating, bro. So I'm not going to tell her to cheat on this man. Otherwise, it's great.
Why is Future toxic?
Are you serious?
I'm just asking. I don't want no beef on horrible decisions. Maybe that was a horrible decision to ask that question.
Wait. Join us every Monday on the iHeart app, the #1 place for podcasts. And don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Rectech, more than a grill, it's a lifestyle. Can't go wrong. RECTEQ.com. All right, Joy. Tua made his debut last Sunday. Didn't have to do much, but he beat the Rams. He's 1-0. We're going to go through the rest of his games. It's called Hua. What's it called again? Tua beats Hua. The staff came up with this. Are we ready to go? We have music with it? All right. Do you ask me the game?
No, I was not given a paper. Am I supposed to be doing that? I can just pull up the Dolphins schedule and ask you.
All right, Joe, do you want me to just go with it, John? Okay, week 9 at Arizona. Let's go with a loss. Cardinals coming off a bye. They have the #1 total offense. He doesn't have as much time to prepare. Week 9 Cardinals loss. Week 10 at the Chargers. Tua wins. Chargers have to travel cross-country after a Week 9 home game against the Raiders. Chargers have not been a good road team and not a good team with a lead. I like Flores, the coach, out-battling Anthony Lynn. Week 11, Denver. I'm going to give them a win. Broncos' scoring offense is inept. Bronco quarterbacks' passer ratings this year have been 72.5. Only the Patriots are worse. So I'm going to go with what I think is a better coach in an ugly low-scoring game. Week 12, Jets. That's a win. Dolphins beat them 24-0 in Week 6. Jets have only scored over 20 points once this year. They've got nothing to play for. Could be tanking. That's a win. Week 13, Bengals. I'm going to go loss on this. Burrow's getting better protection every week. Joe Burrow has the most completions in the NFL of any quarterback. I'm not joking. They're getting better every week. I've given him a couple close wins. This is a close loss. And I think Joe Burrow gets better and kind of runs the day. Week 14, Kansas City. Loss. Chiefs are a great road team. By the way, the Chiefs' defense is the story here. Not just Mahomes. Their defense has held opponents to 20 or fewer points in 7 to 8 games this year. So the Kansas City's the best team in football. You can argue Pittsburgh second, Tampa second, Seattle second. Kansas City's the best team in football. Week 15, Patriots. That's a win. It'll be the end of a 3-game road trip. Patriots will have gone to the Chargers. They've gone to the Rams. I'm going to take Tua winning that game. Week 16 at the Raiders. Loss. Raiders 300-plus total yards in 12 straight games. I don't think Tua is ready to engineer that kind of offense with a bad offensive line. Week 17 at the Bills. Bills will be in a fight for the playoff division title. I'll take the Bills. By the way, the Bills have won each of the last 4 games. They match up with them pretty well. Gave Miami one of their ugly losses this year. So let's count it. So it would be a win against the Rams, loss Cardinals, win, loss, win, loss. That would be 5-5. Tua would be 5-5 at the end of the season. And what would you do with him?
Well, I think what he looks like in that 5-5 is what matters.
Because we thought they'd be 5-5 with Fitzpatrick.
Right.
Or, 8-8 with Fitzpatrick.
And, while it would be nice to make the playoffs with Tua,
let's not be crazy.
Progression is the goal, yes.
I
think it depends on how he looks.
I want you guys to keep that. Goulet, archive that. I want to be
recorded.
I want to be held accountable on that prediction.
Okay.
Tua is 5-5. The Dolphins go 8-8, which is for the record about what I think they'd do with Fitzpatrick. Maybe a game better. I don't think he can win shootouts against Cincinnati or the Raiders at this point. I don't see that happening. Upgrade Michelin Endurance XD silicone wiper blades. Walmart, only place that has them 2 times longer. They'll last than other blades. We'll see you tomorrow. The Herd.
Hey everyone, it's Cody Koch here. You may know me from Vine, YouTube, or as the co-host of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. But my brand new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, presented by Trojan Brand Condoms, is out right now. Join me and a celebrity guest on each episode as we try to right the wrongs of bad advice on topics ranging from work to sex to social media. Here's a little preview from my chat with Tim Dillon. What do you seek out in a partner?
I want someone impressed by what I do, which is so unhealthy. I want someone impressed that I'm on this show.
Yeah.
You did a podcast with Cody Co. That's big. He's got a trillion gajillion followers on whatever app. He's on Ding Dong.
On TikTok.
Whatever it is.
On Ding Dong.
Zip Zop or whatever the kids are on.
My advice to you right now, go listen to my new podcast, The Pleasure Is Ours, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mandy B, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
And I'm Wheezy, former tech exec turned podcaster and comedy writer. We're the hosts of the Horrible Decisions podcast. Through laughter and education, we work to destigmatize kinks, normalize conversations that are taboo, like sex, dating, relationships. Check us out every Monday.
That's right. Don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, the #1 app for podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to.